of violence. The last time I had opened with reading the motion for my speech was when I was in high school. But maybe it would have done opposition an entirely good job, ladies and gentlemen, if they did that, so that they know that we don't have to defend that violent or that social injustice is a legitimate excuse for all forms of social injustice. We told you that it's not, and we don't think so. Especially if Ashish conceded to my POI that genocide or that other forms of state oppression is a form of injustice anyways. The second clarification I want to make is never mind about that debate, because this is why opposing government is so beautifully ignored in Iran. Because we told you that even if we're talking about a fully functional state, where there's only structurally unequal societies, ladies and gentlemen, like India, where people or minorities are just allowed to vote, like Malaysia, where there's an affirmative action policy for the majority, ladies and gentlemen, we think that the presence of alternatives for these people to vote or for these people to fight does not delegitimize violence as a method. At least opposing government gave credence to the context that OO wants to debate in this round. But that OO, ladies and gentlemen, even actually tried to presuppose anything out of the context that government ever wanted and debated that. No, they didn't. What's the third clarification? It's easy to claim, coming from CO, that people will go crazy and use violence every single time, right? But two responses. One, let's be reasonable. It's not reasonable expectations. In the rational calculus of people, it's not as if committing violence is easy, because you risk dying, by the way, and you also risk not succeeding. Which means, when people do this, it has to be for a particularly important cause, and they will not do it every single time. But second of all, maybe there will be some crazy people, because you don't think exist in the world. But those are the exceptions more than the rule, and we never judge a method, ladies and gentlemen, by the exception of individuals more than we do on the rule. But this is the last clarification I want to make. I don't think they realize how big a concession this strategy of, obviously, if it's rape, right, we can allow them to defend themselves and kill people, really is bad for them. Because this is a concession of two things. One, that violence is not bad in all circumstances, and there are certain situations where it is justified. But then second of all, that even if violence does not have a guaranteed end of success, you do not judge a method by that end, ladies and gentlemen, because you allow people to do that. Anyways, what's the first issue? Will violence really make things worse? Because this is the battle cry of opening opposition. You will receive backlash, you will not have international support. And closing opposition there extended by saying that you will break down people's day-to-day lives and day-to-day routines. Two responses. First, even if you're peacefully striking in Singapore, like the bus drivers in PRC, you will receive backlash, ladies and gentlemen, and you will disrupt a certain form of lifestyle. Because it's called protest. You need to be able to harm something, to have a bargaining chip, to extract concession out of certain people, right? And other people, the people who are harmed and are hassled by your method, will always hate you for that. The question they have to answer is how significantly more polarizing is a method of violence than any other form of protest which may disable people from their ordinary lives. This is something that they should have quantified from the onset if they wanted to argue to us that backlash is wrong because it happens either way. The second response is this. This is even factually incorrect. It's true that there are some people who hate Hezbollah and who hate Al-Qaeda, but there are also some people who support Hamas and Myanmar the same way that both groups have supporters and anti-supporters, ladies and gentlemen. And if you look at it, this means that the justification of people supporting each other does not really lie on the method in itself, right? It lies on maybe how proportional that method is, how close the cause is to their hearts, ladies and gentlemen, how important is this value towards them. Which means that very rarely is the violence and is the method the only arbiter, ladies and gentlemen, if they're going to receive support. Which means that there is also an equal probability on our side that these people will still receive support from the international community. But this is what I like best. Then they say that when you're going to be hurting innocent individuals, ladies and gentlemen, you're not necessarily targeting just the people oppressing you. I want to deconstruct this statement. Who really is innocent, ladies and gentlemen? If a person who disagrees with your oppression but is acquiescent to the state's actions of social injustice continually occurring in status quo is not doing anything about it, is he or she really innocent? If a Republican votes for anti-poor policies, ladies and gentlemen, if a person doesn't vote even if they know there is a problem, is that not really acquiescence to the problem and a participation in your social unjust condition? We think, ladies and gentlemen, that it is. And that you cannot call anyone innocent, that if they happen to get hurt by this policy, maybe sometimes they do deserve it. But second of all, ladies and gentlemen, we think that if you weigh it, in their model there are innocent individuals who are hurt. But it's not as if on our side these individuals aren't. These people have to suffer policies of their state that do not protect them. So at worst, ladies and gentlemen, we are equal in damaging someone. At trying to fight, ladies and gentlemen, against a structural oppression. This is where closing government, ladies and gentlemen, is heavily ignored in the round. We told you this issue has a simple conclusion. That one, no, violence does not make things worse. That sometimes it is the escalation of that situation that is needed to spark discourse and to call attention because you have nothing else to defend you. And that even when there is, if this is the more expedient method, then why not? Because justice, ladies and gentlemen, always has to be served as expediently as possible because continuous injustice is always an affront to the life that an individual lives on an everyday basis. But two, even if at best or at worst we weren't able to prove this, closing or the entire opposition was never able to respond to you and tell you why the end of a method, ladies and gentlemen, is necessarily the way that we're going to justify or judge a particular method. Part one,
we can concede almost all your analysis of people having their backs to the wall and acting not largely out of desperation. The thing is that it doesn't work because you resort to disproportionate methods like FARC, like Fatah, like the Free Syrian Army have done. Can you defend these actions?
Oh honey, what is disproportionate if an entire system is against you and you cannot do anything about it anymore? But there is a second issue. Is there a value in protecting socially unjust systems? Which will also tackle that POI. OVO says there's a value in placing laws. CO says, but you should have a society who is based on trust, ladies and gentlemen. And this is the way it comes out as Chris. I don't know how Mike will spin this. But there is context. One, are those laws really even based on trust or fulfilling their function if there is social injustice currently existing? If you concede that sometimes people cannot even vote in India, ladies and gentlemen, or voices are drowned out simply because they are numerous, because they are a minority, and by numbers they will always lose, are these laws really protecting everyone? The contract of that state is not only to the people who rely on the majority, ladies and gentlemen, and can structuralize their laws. It also is liable to the farmers, who the state has absolutely no incentive to protect, ladies and gentlemen, because they are replaceable commodities who you can breed anyways, and anyone will desperately take that job. We think that if you look at it, the more important question we need to answer is, can these laws not become better and not be established after the violence? This is why Mike had to respond, ladies and gentlemen, to Cheech. Because if you look at it, he told you that the end of violence is not an end in itself. It is a method for you to extract concessions